Thank you for tuning into this week's podcast. This week, I'm talking with Joe Henkel, and we're talking about Christian media and media in general from a Christian perspective. Joe runs a business called Create Wonder Media and helps entrepreneurs grow and sell on social media. He's a podcaster, YouTube, and filmmaker, and currently resides in Fort Worth, Texas. Joe does a lot of work with online creators, helping them get their message and word out there. And so I thought this conversation would be a great thing for Christian media in general, and also creators who seek out to create content. So if you guys do enjoy this podcast, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast and like us on any of the social medias where you can find us. Thank you. Joe, how you doing today?
I'm doing amazing. It's good to be here.
As you know, the point of this podcast is to have clear, concise Christian conversations. Today we're talking about media, Christian media more specifically, in a very visual world. And when I say media, as you probably agree, but maybe for those who don't necessarily know what exactly media means, media is generally just content in general, whether that be video, live video, pictures, words even, just that kind of thing. And so one of my quick questions I had for you, Joe, what I wanted to know was, who is your all-time favorite Christian comedian, and why is it Tim Hawkins?
That question is incorrect. As Quentin Tarantino says, I reject your premise. Right now I love Shama Marama.
I haven't heard of him.
You haven't heard of him? He has these funniest skits. And Jaron Myers is really good. But Shama has these skits where he does he does a ton on Instagram Reels. That's like that one end times preacher, or like that one camp speaker, or that one pastor who's stuck on a verse. So his are amazing.
So the reason why I bring up Tim Hawkins is because it seems like Tim Hawkins is a staple in Christian comedy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Everyone and their mother who goes to church has at least shared one Tim Hawkins video, one Tim Hawkins clip. And the reason I bring up Tim Hawkins is because there's the Christian comedy, like the Tim Hawkins that everyone knows. And then you think of someone like Dave Chappelle. Now, Dave Chappelle, I find freaking hilarious. Now, I know he is vulgar in some ways, but in terms of objective looking at comedy, I would say that Dave Chappelle is funnier than Tim Hawkins. Now, I don't know if it's because, I haven't figured this out entirely for myself, if it's simply because Tim Hawkins' genre is Christian, so is vulgarity limiting to comedy itself, or is it actual skill? Because it's fair to say, objectively, Dave Chappelle is a really good comic. Now, of course, there are other ones. I'm just using Dave Chappelle as an example, but you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I love Dave Chappelle. I'm also obsessed with Conan. Conan O'Brien is one of my favorites. But I also think the obsession with Tim Hawkins is somewhat based on location. So I know he's super big down south more, but in California and in the Northeast, I want to say he's as the Christian world isn't as obsessed with him. But being from Massachusetts, I am a huge Conan fan, and Conan is also from Massachusetts. So there's that. But also I think the genre that someone's in, I think knowing anyone knowing their genre is actually really important, and also really it helps kind of guide whatever they say. So I think there's different values in having those different genres.
Yeah. I get, but because I'm not saying that Tim Hawkins is not funny. He's definitely a funny man. I've even found him on TikTok. He came up on my For You page. I didn't even know he did social media, and then I find out he has a TikTok. I'm like, oh, what is this? And he's a funny guy. But I feel like, at least for me, when I first started creating content, back however old I was, I kept feeling like that because I'm trying to make Christian content, that I felt limited half the time, you know? Maybe because the platform itself isn't a Christian platform, you know? But that doesn't necessarily make a difference. But it felt like I was limited to maybe how entertaining, quote unquote, I could be. So is it that entertainment and Christianity don't mix? I would say maybe more so that not that Christianity and entertainment don't mix, but more so like does what society or culture calls entertainment doesn't mix with Christianity exactly.
Yeah, I think it's kind of a weird situation that sometimes we put ourselves in, and like we have to make content specifically for, I think, any artist, Christian or not. Like there's this kind of there's this expectation that we put on ourselves that we have to make something that lines up with a certain genre. Like, for example, I would say like mainstream rap music, and it has a tendency to like, oh, this music is supposed to be about these certain topics. Mm-hmm. Country music is the worst for this. Like, country music artists, like for some reason, they figured out like they can only make songs about like these 5 topics. And it's dogs, trucks, whatever, love. I don't know what those other 2 topics
are. It's beer,
tractors,
trucks, and girls. Oh, and tractors.
There we go. Yeah. So I think any creative kind of gets pressured by themselves and their own expectation of what they've seen in like that art or that art form to like only make that type of content. So I think Christians do in another sense too. But also, I mean, Christianity is extremely important to us. Like as someone who's trying to follow Jesus with our whole life, like obviously it's super important, but I don't think we necessarily have to box ourselves in by like, oh, we can only talk about these certain topics, or we have to only enjoy life within a certain like box that we put ourselves into.
Yeah. So
like when it comes to comedy or when it comes to art or YouTube, it's like, well, first of all, a lot of us, we're just creating content. Like it's not like, I wouldn't say like, you know, the YouTube videos that I make now are like Christian YouTube videos. They're YouTube videos and I'm a Christian. So like, or my podcast or the media that I do for clients or stuff. So like, I think so some people Christians choose to create content that's like specifically for Christians or talk about Christianity. And I think that's valuable too. But I don't think Christian content creators necessarily have to like box in like, oh, every video or every post or everything that I do has to have Jesus on it.
Yeah. And it's not to say that like Jesus can't be a part of all of it, but like it's a job or it's a skill that you're doing, and you have to bring an entertaining thing to a niche of people. And so that niche of people may be people who are woodworkers. And so you're making woodwork. And so can Jesus be a part of woodworking? Obviously. He was a carpenter. And so there's obviously things that you could throw in there. But is it essential for the product that you're delivering? Like if you're working at a fast food restaurant, I'm kind of going into this like, is it a Christian artist or an artist who's a Christian kind of conversation? Like if you're working at a fast food restaurant, you're making burgers. There's nothing wrong with making burgers, but like, do they have to be Christian burgers? You know what I mean?
Yeah, for sure.
And so like, there is a product that you are creating. I don't know if it feels like Christianity in general, or maybe not Christianity in general, churches in general, when they view art and media, it's viewed differently than like other products and services that are out there. I don't know if it's just because like how art has an impact on people, more of an impact than people really realize, but it does have an impact on people. And maybe it's just that impact that art can create. You're expected as a Christian to use that impact for the purpose of the gospel or whatever. But you mentioned something earlier about rap music that I wanted to go back to. So I'm more of like a rock kind of person in terms of my music taste. And I think this was about in 2013 or 2012, somewhere there. That's now that I'm saying that out loud, I realize that it's so long ago now. I'm still living in like a 2014 era in my head. POD. Have you heard of that band? Classic Christian rock band. Well, anyway, POD, Payable Upon Death. They are a West Coast rock genre of Christian music. Fantastic band, by the way. In one of their more recent albums in that time frame, that 2012, 2013 time frame, they dropped like a partially censored F-bomb in a song. And for some reason that made everyone go crazy. And it's not the first time or the last time that a Christian artist put a swear word or something of that nature in a song, in a Christian song. And, you know, it was weird that it was taken so poorly, I guess, by the Christian public. Because the song that they were doing, it was a song that was, it's the perspective of a sinner looking at Jesus Christ. How do I live up to that example? My life is so effed up, kind of thing. And so it had a really powerful message in the song, but everyone seemed to get hung up on the specific language in it. Now, are artists who are Christians limited, like, and that's where like the whole like are we limited by the Christianity part of it? Should we not use specific language like in our things?
So there's a few different like kind of different aspects of that. First of all, I think, you know, some Christians have a conviction about like a certain language that they should use. And I think like, obviously we all have guidelines of what we do and don't say. And there's things that are socially wrong. And like even like mainstream culture sees certain words as inappropriate in certain times. So I think first part of that is like, you know, we have, so there's a certain like personal aspect of it of like, oh, this is the language that I just don't personally won't use or whatever. But then the other aspect is like, when it comes to, are Christians limited to a certain like guidelines in art? Like, I would kind of say no, like, because
I mean, like, it is hard to define. It is art. How do you define art to begin with? You know what I mean?
Yeah. So like, which is funny is like, is it wrong for someone in a Christian movie to be killed, or to like is a murder scene in a Christian or in a Christian book wrong? No, because that artist isn't creating that, you know, like, or I would just say in a movie in general, it's like, you know, I love Scorsese movies or Tarantino movies, and a lot of people die in those movies, but they're not guilty for killing those people. So like, I think in a weird way, sometimes in art, especially people that want to put a lot of their morality into what they're creating, I don't necessarily think like, let's pick on God's Not Dead, because these are the God's Not Dead series are my
classic Christian movie right there.
Are my least favorite movies of all time, basically. But I saw 1 and 2, so I think there's 3 or 4 out now.
There are 3 and 4. I didn't even know that. So.
No, I think 4 just came out.
Oh my!
For some reason, I think they're even showing like 4 in theaters. I don't even know how there's an audience that would watch it in theaters. But basically, the premise of the movie is the atheists are bad and the Christians are good, and the atheists lose in the end, or I think the atheist becomes a Christian in the end or something, and the Christians are the superhero and the atheist is the villain. Yeah, it's, you know, like, and that's just not how people work
real life at all. No,
yeah, like we all do things that are good and we all do things that are evil. So I think there's like this, and maybe part of it is rooted in the Bible or whatever, but there's like this kind of desire by some, I wouldn't say Christian artists, I would say by pressure put on maybe by Christianity on artists, is like that there's supposed to be a moral to every story that's told, or every piece of art or content that's put out is supposed to represent moral belief that a Christian has, and I disagree with that.
Yeah, I mean that's fair. Now, I get that like stories, they all have a story to them, and there's something that is a writer who's writing that story is trying to tell. And so, like, if the writer is trying to portray something very difficult, because oftentimes most big concepts that eventually get adapted into society start as very abstract pieces of art. And so, like, if there's an idea that an artist is trying to convey to everyone, it may take something that is seen as, I don't want to say like crude, but like uneasy, I guess. Not necessarily like full on like just disgusting stuff, but like it makes you like put yourself in a little bit of an uneasy situation seeing it, you know? And it's not necessarily for the shock value of it, but more so for the story element to convey and put you in the mind of the protagonist and to low-key make it relatable. Because, I mean, we all have our own flaws and stuff, and we all see ourselves as the protagonist in our own life, even though Christianity will tell you otherwise. But that's another discussion for another day. What I want to get to is that pressure you were saying from the church, or Christianity, I should say. I think that may be more so of a generational thing. And
interesting.
In my last podcast, we talked about generational differences. And so like the old, the young, and even younger kind of things. And there are definitely cultural differences by age. And I think every generation for the long time gets it wrong in how to treat the next generation and how to treat the older generation. And so obviously, if even in the secular world's getting that wrong, obviously it's highly likely the Christian world's getting that wrong because we're all human. But I think there may be, because today it's a very visual world. We are spending a lot of time on social media, not always in a bad way, but we're all there, you know. It's where the people are at. And so if we're trying to get the gospel out there, or at least some representation of Christianity, because it's now even more apparent that since I heard this at church the other day, that other countries are now sending missionaries to the United States. And so it's like, that should be more of a sign that there are less and less people who have that, I guess, inherent understanding that I know myself has, maybe you have as well, just growing up in the church, like that inherent cultural understanding of Christianity that's less known now, possibly in the United States. And how do you communicate to all those people? Oh, I mean, that's going to be on Facebook. It's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Instagram. It's going to be wherever all the people are at. And so, not necessarily from a content creator's perspective, because a content creator's job is to create content for a niche. I may be saying niche wrong. Niche, data, however you want to say it. Potato, tomato. I'm derailing myself. Now where was I? Oh shoot! Now I'm embarrassed. We
tomato. That's where you were.
Yeah, exactly. We're creating. We're in this virtual space of people, right? Social media, how we interact online. Huge like your face, your name online. If you're known to be, like, if you have Christian in your bio or whatever, everything you do online is now representing Christianity online. And of course, you get everyone's seen the crazy people who say that they're Christian and then starts blasting, I guess, either hatred or very poor kinds of content online, sharing that kind of stuff, which is very not representative of Christ at all. And so I guess that's where like Christian creators can come into play, not necessarily creating content that is Christian, but it's content that is made by a Christian. So like there are that inherent understanding of Christianity. Am I going off?
No, I think first of all, there's a lot of value and the goodness in just beauty in of itself.
Yeah.
So I would say a beautiful landscape. Let's say like outside on my back porch, I can kind of see the hills and see kind of some of the city by where I live, and I think it's beautiful. And as a believer, I believe that points to a creator, but like it's not beauty in of itself isn't like it's good in itself. So like sometimes we can just create something that's good or something that's beautiful or something that's entertaining and doesn't have to have like a meaning behind it. I think it's some part of that it is cultural, and like obviously like art has always been infused with a message, whether that's political, whether that's religious, and I think we have freedom and liberty to use art or content or YouTube videos to share a message, whether that's share the gospel, whether that's share biblical truth, whether that's to just share a political belief or all these different things, right? Mm-hmm. We have the freedom to, but I don't think it's not our responsibility to share a message in everything we create. Sometimes I think we can just create to inspire someone or just create something that we think is good and beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, beauty itself is being able to interpret beauty. I heard some very smart people talking about beauty itself. Like the social value of beauty is that you can then contrast it with the not so beautiful of life. And so then if you're able to now make these two distinctions, you have beautiful and not beautiful, not necessarily talking about people, but just, the idea of beauty and the idea of ugly. Now you have two areas. Now you have an ideal and now you have a not ideal. So now you have an aim of where to go at that point. And so that's like, I guess, the philosophical reason why beauty is important to make. And so with Christian content, if we're not making quote unquote beautiful content, quality content, we're not making that aim for Christian media to be good. You know what I mean? Just objectively good.
Yeah.
And so like the importance of objectively good media, one, helps present at least our lives, because we're living our lives as an example that there is beauty in the Christian life. It's not all doom and gloom, whereas we are going to suffer for Christianity, but we're not suffering for suffering's sake. There is still beauty in that. And so there's still an aim and a purpose that drives your life forward and gives it meaning. And so and that all stems from just, especially from content creators, you're helping make some of that beauty, and I mean, that's a call in itself. Whether you're making how-to videos on YouTube, you can make them beautiful. Not necessarily meaning we're slapping a filter on our video, but you're putting effort and time into those.
Yeah, there's a couple parts to that. I tend to separate content from art. So in the sense of like, I would say for me, it's poetry and movies. I haven't made a movie yet, but like that's where I'm kind of building towards. But like, yeah, for me, like my poetry is my art, but like everything else isn't. So for me, like YouTube videos are just content. Like I don't think like I'm not trying to make a YouTube video beautiful or like just sometimes, I mean, I don't mind creating. I want to create it with quality, but I don't like feel like I need to create this like in a way that inspires people. Sometimes it's just educational content or entertainment content. So like I do separate content and art. So I think like every artist kind of has the passion to create something that's beautiful, that's inspirational, that's really like just high quality and the best they can make. And on the other side, I think content in general doesn't have to be our art. It doesn't have to be our like. I think sometimes like that holds us back. Like, oh, every single thing I post on Instagram has to look perfect. But I just like,
Yeah.
So I in my mind, I separate the content and the art. And then on the art side, like I'm obsessed with movies. So the reason I think that Christian movies have a bad rap, and I pick on Christian, I wouldn't pick on Christian movies, but I think I pick on certain Christian movies because
I think we all do, to be fair.
Yeah, because like a lot of times Christian movies are created, certain Christian movies, let's say God's Not Dead, my least favorite Christian movie.
The one easy to pick on, yeah.
Yeah, it seems like it's created to promote a message rather than just to put something good out there. Mm-hmm. And when someone goes to a movie theater and the movies that we like are movies that entertain us and inspire us and make us think, but when a movie's create like primary goal is to present a message rather than to just create something that's good and beautiful and inspiring and that people like, that's when I feel like movies start to get, or art in general, starts to feel less like art and feel less like something that we want to enjoy. So my criticism of God's Not Dead and God's Not Dead 2, and probably I'm guessing God's Not Dead 3 and 4 and
4 and 5 and 6 and 7 and then 2030 coming out, God's Not Dead 11. Here we go.
I'm curious on who's going to win, Fast and Furious or God's Not Dead, on making too many movies that we don't
that need to end. Just stop. Stop.
God's still not dead. I pick on this movie because I feel like it wasn't created in a way that I can't speak towards the creator, but I can speak to how it's received. Mm-hmm. It's not presented in a way and that it feels like, oh, this was just a good story that's believable. That's how people actually act and how people live and like true to what I know the world to be.
I think maybe what you're trying to say, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but like it seems more like the movie has an agenda to the story it's telling rather than telling a good story. Is that accurate?
Exactly. But yeah, and I think there's art that can have an agenda behind it, but it has to be good art, and it has to be like kind of made in a good way. For example, Born in the USA by Springsteen is very much has an agenda behind it, but it's also a really, really good piece of art. Yeah. That even if you disagree with the agenda behind it, you can still probably enjoy that piece of art if you like that style of music or whatever, right? Yeah. And I think there's lots of other things. And I think going back to the cultural things, I think our culture is so obsessed with the message, and we're so obsessed with some agenda, and we're like, oh, I'm going to cancel my subscription to this streaming service because I think there's an agenda behind it that I disagree with or whatever, like, so. And I think there's like a lot of political polarization on both sides. Oh yeah. The right and left, where it's like, we're obsessed with everything being according to our political preferences, and that's kind of influence every form of media, including Christian media.
Oh yeah, 100%. Like I'll go further into the whole, because the God's Not Dead one is just an easy one to pick on. Most Christians, I would say, I started seeing this kind of message probably in 2009 or 2010 when I first started seeing this message of like atheist bad, Christian good. And of course we believe that atheism is not correct because it's in direct what's the word I'm trying to say? It's saying the opposite of what we're saying.
Sure.
And so obviously there is some conflict there. But Jesus still loves the atheist just as much as you. And we're called to love, how Jesus loved, love thy neighbor as yourself. And so like this whole idea that I'm a Christian, you're atheist, you're bad, completely goes away from that whole idea that we're supposed to be loving to them. And so, like, if you in this whole thing of like God's not dead, a lot of how it was received, I should say, by people, maybe not necessarily intended by the creators, but how it was received was that I'm on the good team, you're on the bad team. Not, I believe you're hurting and I want to help you. You know what I mean? Like, that's two different perspectives to take in the whole atheist versus Christian thing. And that all annoys me. And of course, you can have a civil conversation with an atheist. And if the atheist is the one not making it civil, well, that's not on you. But if you're the one not making it civil as a Christian, that's really bad, because you're called to be higher in your speech and your actions. And if you can't even do that, that's pretty much the exact opposite of what you're supposed to be doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I also believe that Christian art doesn't have to. I think someone could be a Christian artist and not create art or with a message that's preaching Jesus. For some reason, like in certain communities, let's say music, like it seems like there's somewhat a pressure for like every Christian artist to make only Christian music, or for a Christian writer to only make Christian books, or same with Christian movies or whatever. I just like that doesn't like logically make sense, or there's no like reason why I think that pressure should be there.
Yeah.
So I support it, and I'm like, oh, awesome. Like if someone wants to make good Christian media, like go for it. Like if that's true to what you believe and what you want to do and what you feel like there's a need for, and you can do it good, like go for it. But I think there doesn't need to be a pressure. Sometimes I honestly think it's more personal. So like there's cultural pressure on people, but like at the end of the day, people do what they do because they make their own decision. Like they don't have to let that pressure get to them. So for me, I love good movies with Christian themes, or even made by Christians that aren't necessarily that regardless of the message that they share in the movie or song or book, you know.
There's a fun fact. I forget the name of this movie every time, but I watched it. It's a horror movie. I want to say it was The Conjuring. I can't remember which one it is. But and someone can correct me. They have like two. It's like The Conjuring 1 and The Conjuring 2. I forget which ones it is. Either way, the directors of those movies, it was two guys, and they were Christian guys.
Interesting.
Very like openly Christian people. And they made a horror movie. And like I watched it because when I found that out, I was curious. I'm like, interesting. And because I'm not a big fan of horror movies. For some reason they get to me a little bit. But I watched that one, and I was able to enjoy it. Like it wasn't like I wasn't filled with fear at the end of the movie. Like you watched a really good movie. And I'm not a big horror fan, so like coming from me is, I mean, at least somewhat describing of the quality of the movie itself. And I think that may be part of the point of what we're trying to say here, is that like there wasn't necessarily a come to Jesus moment in that movie, but it was still a very high quality movie. And maybe maybe I misspoke earlier when I was trying to say like that every video or every piece of content that a creator is creating has to be beautiful. I don't necessarily mean that it has to be like inspiring, because I understand the inspiring genre, because maybe that's what we have to define more so. Like there's inspiring is like a genre, a goal of a video. So it's not all like a Christian's goal to make all their content inspiring, but I think every Christian's end goal of everything sublying is to get people to Christ. And so what that means is, say if you're let's use myself for an example. I make gaming videos on the side. You know, I make entertainment. I make just discussional things online. And not all of it is definitively Christian. Okay? I mean, I'm not just streaming extremely crude material online or posting that kind of stuff, but I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid to, if the situation arises where I have to make a moral call when it comes to Christianity and what's being presented, like I'll make that. I'll talk about it and at least say what I've known the Bible to say. And so maybe that's what I'm trying to say more so, rather than making everything beautiful. Like the goal of a content creator who is Christian is to do everything to your best ability. I'm not saying you have to go rent a red camera to shoot every YouTube video, because I mean that'd be absurd. That's not the norm for the platform. The norm for the platform is you can get a DSLR or heck even your phone and shoot a video. But like what I'm saying by making it beautiful is that the quality of it, not necessarily objective quality, but like it's weird defining like the quality of content.
Yeah, interesting. I'm curious to continue.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about this as we're talking about it as well, because I don't think I have it fully down yet either. But like the quality that you're creating. So I guess one way I can say it is like an example. When you first, if you're interested in making Christian content or just content in general, you'll find groups of similar people, similar-minded people trying to also pursue this hobby or field of content creation. And so in the Christian realm of things, you'll find Christian YouTube groups. And I'm not saying there's anything, there's nothing wrong with these kind of groups, okay? They're all well-intended, well-purposeful. But after you've been in a lot of them for a while, you can pick up on people who are there for quick numbers, quick pickup, like get me moving in an algorithm kind of thing. And of course that obviously doesn't work. Anyone who's been in this, I guess, field or whatever knows that doesn't work long term. And so, but like if you look at their content, because I'm always curious, if you look at their content, you can tell that there's like a level of quality that is not there. And that may come from just the intention of the heart of like why you're making this. And maybe that's just us interpreting it as quality. Like if I'm making content for the sole purpose to get super famous so then I can do XYZ, that there's an underlying tone that I guess you can not necessarily pick out of a video, but like you pick up little hints over time. And so like you can tell that quality in these like small groups. Like if you watch some random person's video and you're like, I didn't like that. Not because I don't understand their niche that they're trying to talk to, but like it just felt this is more about me rather than about what I'm talking about, versus someone who's more, and maybe it's just that they're more giving in their content creation. It's more about me giving this to you rather than you giving your viewership to me.
Yeah, it's interesting. Quality is an interesting thing. And I think it's so it's subjective and like so hard for us to judge. So for example, like the show The Bachelorette, it's been on basically my whole life, I feel like. But for some reason people love the show. Or
yeah.
It literally, the concept doesn't even make sense to me. I mean, it's probably has a really large budget. My mind can't even process that people think of relationships this way. So maybe that's because of my faith. Maybe that's just because of the way that I think or whatever. But like, that's something that someone would find quality. And then on the other side, for some reason, there's people who don't like the movie Star Wars, like people who just don't like the Star Wars movies. And I don't understand that either, because they're just amazing movies. They're some of the greatest movies ever made. So like the quality part is subjective, first of all, on like what we enjoy. And also like there are people that people really enjoy watching just like a someone's doing a cell phone video of them just talking about their life, and some of those videos get tens of thousands of views, and some people enjoy watching that. But and that's I think for me, I guess it's dependent on who's the person is, and if I like, usually I won't watch those, but there's just a couple of people, if I'm really interested in their life, I'll watch something like that. But the thing is, like, I think quality in of itself is subjective. And then on the beauty side, I'm curious too, and I don't have like a answer to this necessarily, of like what is beauty, and can beauty be kind of presented in an objective manner, which maybe not. Like, if it's evil, it can't be beautiful, I know that. But like, but also
maybe we
there's
can
beauty
make the
found in
distinction. Maybe we can make the distinction of like something that's beautiful versus something that's attractive.
Okay, interesting.
So like something can be both beautiful and attractive, but something can also be evil and attractive. You know what I mean? So attraction like makes that distinction of something that's beautiful and something that's good. You know what I mean? I should say that attraction makes the distinction between something that's good and bad.
Yeah. I agree with that. But I think a lot of times we tend to, and this, like, everyone has a different opinion. We tend to like try to force a definitive way of like, oh, this is good or this is bad, when it's just art and it is subjective.
Yeah. I think that may become that, and where we find the different subjective to things. I think there's definitely, maybe that's the whole point of the niches that we all fill as at least Christian content creators, or I should say content, even I'm messing up my language, even content creators that are Christian, there's still niches and genres that had to be filled. And I'm wondering if like that beauty in a video, that what we're talking about as beauty, comes from either the intention, like the intention in the heart of the creator, or if that's something else that I'm completely wrong. And I'm always willing to talk about it. But man, it's complex.
Yeah, and I don't have a definitive answer to that either.
Yeah,
I mean, I encourage and support anyone that's sincerely doing something that is good. You know, like, so like, you know, someone just might not be very interested on camera right now, but they're just trying, they're making something, and I think especially when we all start as YouTubers or whatever, where we're doing practices that aren't necessarily best for the platform or best for just what looks the best, you know, like just trying to get anyone to subscribe, you know, get those first few hundred subscribers. Then after a point, I think you kind of realize like, oh, not everyone's interested in the type of content that I'm making. And like, so like some of those practices, some of those things, it's like, it can come off the wrong way, but I mean, like we can't judge people's heart, or like, oh, they're just doing this to get views, or just, you know, so there's so many just different things. And I think one thing I'm reminding myself is like what I really enjoy from like entertainment type perspective, and what's actually like objectively good aren't always the same.
Yeah. And maybe we can end with this talking point. So like content creators that are Christian, that are wanting to make content, that are wanting to get the story out there. They're wanting to get their art out there. What's the best way? Because I have yet to find, at least for myself, the best way to either get constructive criticism or feedback that seems to just not come naturally from other Christians. You know what I mean? Like, since we're so few in the content creation field, it's hard to find similar, like ones who are making very similar content, number one, and then number two, getting useful constructive feedback on things. Like, what am I doing, not necessarily from a technical point of view, from like a quality point of view, that can make my content better?
Yeah. First of all, I think in any genre or any niche, there's way more people out there doing it. There's way more Christian YouTubers than either of us know. There's way more Christian movies, or there's way more, people who play the guitar on YouTube than guitarists know. And there's way more people talking about Star Wars than, I know. So there's like way more in any genre, including Christianity, on YouTube and out there. And sometimes it takes time, like finding them, building relationships and connecting with the right people in terms of like a collaboration standpoint. But and in terms of criticism and getting constructive criticism, I think my encouragement to especially new creatives or creatives that are just going, like, just stop asking for feedback. Honestly, like for most of us, like just stop asking feedback from anyone. Until you it's for video, until you make like 100 videos, just don't ask anyone for feedback. Because like, first of all, our tendency is to, when we ask for feedback, is to ask for affirmation. Mm-hmm. So like a lot of times, and sometimes, sometimes we're looking for growth and improvement, but that growth and improvement is going to come from learning, either watching videos on how other people are doing it, whether that's reading or however you learn, listen to podcasts. So that growth is going to come from learning and experience, not necessarily from asking people's opinions. And then our tendency is to ask people who aren't professionals. Our tendency is to ask our friends, but like our friends, unless they're professional people doing video, like most of the time our friends are less skilled at what we're trying to do than we are. So like, we're just asking for affirmation from our friends. And honestly, it's like, it's more damaging than helpful, because if they do affirm us, we're just like, oh, it just kind of boosts our pride. And if they don't, it's like, crushes us. So my encouragement is like, until you're really consistent at it and you've learned and you've went through the process of either writing or reading or writing or creating or making YouTube videos or streaming online, or like, just don't ask for it. Don't even care about what people are saying, until you made your first 100 videos, or, wrote your first like 1,000 pages or whatever you're creating. Like it'd be dumb for someone to, or not dumb. It would be naive for someone to, go to 3 guitar lessons and, play 3 blind mice or London Bridge is falling down and say, hey, am I a great guitarist? Like, no, not yet. Like,
I can play lead at church now, right?
Yeah. So like, just practice and keep exercising. And then only when you have relationships with someone and you have a lot of experience and you only ask for people that are really good at it and you respect. Like for me, it's like, I rarely ask for feedback on a video. It's usually just from people I'm collaborating with, or people that, like, at this point, I'm like, okay, I put in the practice, I put in some effort and work now. I'm like just figuring out how to grow more. And then it's like, okay, now I'm asking someone who's professional, who's been doing it longer. But I think a lot of times we just ask for
affirmation.
Because of our own insecurities.
I think that's really big, the whole affirmation thing. Because if you're, like you said, getting affirmed on something, and it's content creation is a craft. It's probably the best way to define it. It's a craft. And so if you're doing your craft poorly and you're being reaffirmed all the time that you're good when you're making this very poorly, you're not going to grow or mature as a content creator in general, because you're not making good content to begin with. And so like, I love that you said that, get your first 100 videos out of the way. You're learning the craft in that moment. Learn it and go through the trial and error and the road bumps. What's the word? Speed bumps. Thank you. The speed bumps that we all run into, because like those speed bumps are almost just necessary to run into to begin with. But what would you say, maybe more so for someone, who's gone through those speed bumps, who's been doing it for a long time? I'm trying not to like talk about myself too much, who isn't growing at a rate that they want to grow. And that's a joke, by the way. And maybe who's wanting to, I don't know, just they feel like they're making the content they're making good content? How do you get not necessarily reaffirmed, but how do you get that constructive criticism as someone who's been making content for a long time to know if what you're doing is objectively good?
Yeah. So the other part of that is only asking people that are doing what you want to do. So I think a lot of times we ask people who, let's say, you ask, this is a popular one with the YouTubers, asking on Facebook, on social media, hey, what should I make the next video about? If you have like only, basically under 100 videos and you're not like being consistent at it and you haven't grown a solid audience, like your audience doesn't know. You're like your Facebook friends or your friends in real life or your people who follow you on Twitter don't know what videos you should be making or don't know what you should be doing. Only ask those who have done what you want to do or those who truly understand and believe in your goals. So like, if you ask, someone maybe that's good at something, but they don't even see your vision or understand it, and you haven't told them, and they don't understand and believe your vision and your goals, like they're just going to tell you the advice, what they think. They think, oh, this is what you should do with your life, but they honestly don't know. So like the only people that I ask for feedback on anything is like, and maybe not in the minor sense, but in like the larger sense, like, oh, what do you think of my YouTube channel? I would only ask people who understand and believe in my goals for my channel, so like, what do you think of the style of guitar? If someone's trying to be a classical guitarist and they ask you, John, they might you might be like, oh, you need to learn how to play rock riffs or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's the type of music that you make. And or someone asks me opinions on music I don't like my mind's always thinking, oh, you should start making my favorite genre of music, or you should make my favorite genre of videos, or what should I do with my life? Our tendency is, oh, you should do what I think you want, so like, I would only focus on asking people who have already done what you want to do. If you don't know those people yet, learn from them. Like if they're creating content online, just watch and learn and figure that out.
Okay. And the last point I want to make, and maybe this is just from experience of being in lots of different Christian groups or whatever, is the concept of humility. I think humility is extremely important when it comes to one, taking feedback, because you got to take everything at a grain of salt at first. But sometimes you may find a gem that is really trying to speak to you, trying to help you. Most of the time, it's like you said, Joe, that they're just trying to get you to fit into what they like. But sometimes you'll actually find those little bits of gems in there, and you have to be humble to accept it. Would you agree with that?
Yeah. I think humility just covers every person's life. Like, and in terms of getting feedback, humility is basically, oh, I don't care what you say, good or bad. No, I don't care, but like what you say, good or bad, isn't going to affect how much I value myself and how much I value what I'm doing. Like if 100 people say, oh man, I hate your video, like I'm just like, well, this is the video that I wanted to make, and this is what I know is right, and then if 100 people say it's great, I'm like, and I don't like the type of video I'm making or type of content I'm making, like, so I think part of it is just like the humility to filter out, like, I'm not going to let other people's opinions control me, but also the humility of like, about even taking feedback, someone could say something that you think is valuable, but like, I think that only comes through life experience and wisdom and testing through certain things. Right. So like, I might say, I might give you advice on where I think your channel could go, and maybe it'd be, and you, maybe it wouldn't, but at the end of the day, I don't know what you should do with your channel. I don't know what anyone should do with their life or with I know I have moral guidelines, and I have certain guidelines of like, oh, this is what I think makes a good video, and this is what helps someone get more subscribers on YouTube. And but those are just opinions. Like at the end of the day, like no one can tell us what our calling is in life.
I like that. Before we end things here, go ahead, Joe. Where can people find you?
Just search Joe Henkel anywhere. JoeHenkel. Honestly, podcast guy, have podcasts. If you like watching YouTube videos, if you just want to connect on Twitter or Facebook or Instagram, feel free to send me a message. I
can attest that he does post quite funny things, and unfortunately, I'm a little too sarcastic sometimes for him. I
love it.
So I have fun following this guy. So don't go anywhere. Go ahead. What was that?
If someone loves the sarcasm, Twitter's the place to be.
I hate Twitter. I'm not gonna white lie it. I hate Twitter.
I had a great time talking with Joe. I think we had some really good, productive conversations. If you also thought that this was a productive conversation, or just enjoyed the podcast in general, please be sure to subscribe to the podcast. It really helps out a ton, and I hope that we can continue to keep putting out great conversations for you. If you do have someone in mind that you would like to hear on the podcast, be sure to go ahead and send us a message with who you'd like. And if you want to support this in any way, be sure to like us on social media, on whichever platform you use the most. Again, thank you all for listening. Hope you all have a great rest of your day.